What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Today we're going to be discussing the 2018 Mega Tin promos. Yesterday the Mega Tin promos got leaked via YG Organization and a couple of other sources, and I know this week I've been doing videos with my grandpa, and if you want to check those out, be sure to go ahead and do so. But we are now back into full force Yu-Gi-Oh content, and I figured this would be good considering I missed this yesterday, and there's a lot I kind of want to discuss with these particular promos. So we're going to be going over the promos one by one, talking about their competitive viability, and just some overall impressions about the promos themselves. But before we get into it, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. It's been a while, but I want to make sure the patrons get their love. So big shout outs to Joe, to Jordan, to Hollis, as well as Mickey. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon or through a YouTube channel membership, then check out the links in the description below, or be sure to click the join button right below the video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, starting off with the cover promo tin, or the secret rares, I guess, whatever you want to call them, the two cards that we kind of got leaked a while back, but we didn't know their effects, we just had the artwork. Starting off with Nebula Neos. It's a level 9 Earth Warrior Fusion effect monster, 3000 attack, 2500 defense. It requires Elemental Hero Neos, Neospatian Grand Mole, and Neospatian Dark Panther. Must first be special summoned by shuffling the above cards you control into the deck. You do not use polymerization, so it's contact fusion. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, draw cards equal to the number of cards your opponent controls, then negate the effects of one face-up card on the field until the end of this turn. Once per turn during the end phase, shuffle this card into the extra deck, and if you do, banish all cards on the field face down. Now, I gotta say, for a Neos Fusion monster, this effect is pretty ridiculous. If you're summoning Nebula Neos when your opponent has like 4 or 5 cards in their control, you're going to be drawing a ton of cards. And not to mention, you basically just evenly match the entire board when it goes and gets shuffled back into the extra deck. And assuming you have all the card advantage and your opponent doesn't really have any, that's kind of how you're going to take control of a game. Now, in terms of competitive viability, you know, it's a Neos card, so, you know, you're not going to be seeing this everywhere. I will say my expectations were surpassed in the fact that the effect is really strong, but the problem is it's not only a Neos card, but it's just so conditional. You have to have a Neos and a Grand Mole and a Dark Panther. Like, it's just a lot, you know? And so while it's a really strong effect, and I gotta give it credit for that, it's just a really conditional card. It's not gonna really see competitive play, but on a casual level, it'll definitely be a lot of fun. Moving on to the other secret rare, we have Junk Speeder. It's a level 5 Wind Warrior Synchro effect monster, 1800 attack, 1000 defense. It requires 1 Synchron Tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can special summon as many Synchron Tuner monsters as possible with different levels from your deck in defense position. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except Synchro monsters the turn you activate this effect. When an attack is declared involving this card that was Synchro summoned this turn and another monster, you can make this card's attack become double its original attack until the end of this turn, so 3600, and you can only use each effect once per turn. So being able to swarm the field with Synchron tuners is really, really crazy, especially considering they just have to be different levels. That could just be a ton of advantage that you are able to assemble for yourself. And not only the fact that you have Synchro monsters, you know, it kind of sucks that you're kind of locked into synchros, because if you could link off and then make synchro monsters, I think this effect would be just insane. But it's a little bit, I think it'd be a little bit too crazy if it didn't have that restriction, so I guess that's probably a good thing. The doubling attack is all right, but I think, again, this card's just very specific in its application. You have to be playing a Synchron or Synchro based deck. Again, really cool design, but I think it's just really held back by that restriction of being locked into Synchro based monsters. Now, moving on to the Ultra Rares. Remember, each Mega Tin will have 4 Ultra Rares in addition to a Secret Rare. So starting off with what I think's probably the best card out of all the tins, Elemental Hero Solid Soldier. Level 4 Earth Warrior effect with 1300 attack, 1100 defense. When it's normal summoned, you can special summon one level 4 or lower hero monster from your hand. So it's basically Goblinberg, but with the hero tag, meaning you can search it with emergency call, making it a lot more accessible than Goblinberg. Goblinberg can summon anything from your hand, basically, so Goblinberg's a little bit better in that respect, but I'd rather have it be more searchable than have it be as not as restrictive in terms of what you can summon. Then, if this card is sent from the monster zone to the graveyard by a spell effect, most presumably something like Mask Change, maybe Polymerization, you can target one hero monster in your graveyard except Solid Soldier, special summon it in defense position, and that's a once per turn effect. So, again, this is just better Goblinberg. I mean, every hero player is going to love this card just because of the effect, just the synergy with the deck. It's a lot more accessible, and then even if you Mask Change this into something like DN, you're getting the ability to special summon something back to the field, so you don't really lose any advantage. If there's any card that's going to be competitive out of these promos, it's going to be Solid Soldier. So really cool card all around, just gotta love it. And that moves us on to Keeper of Dragon Magic. Level 4 Dark Effect Monster, 1800 attack, 1300 defense. If it's normal or special summon, discard a card, add one Polymerization normal spell card or Fusion normal spell card from your deck to your hand. So that's pretty cool. It pretty much searches any Fusion normal spell. You can reveal one Fusion monster in your extra deck, special summon one of the Fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on that monster from your graveyard in face down defense position. You can only use each effect once per turn, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except Fusion the turn you activate this effect. So this is kind of like the Fusion version of that Synchro Secret Rare we just discussed earlier. Again, really cool design. There's not a lot of real application for this card. I think it's cool that you can search any Fusion normal spell card, so you could search something like Instant Fusion if you want to. Again, you're locked in to Fusion monsters, and that's kind of a big restriction on this card, but I mean, it's got pretty solid stats. It's just all around it's decent, but again, it's very, very specific in the kind of deck you're going to be playing this card in. That moves us on to Moo Dragon of the Swamp. It's a level 4 water worm fusion effect monster, 1900 attack, 1600 defense. It requires two monsters with the same attribute, but different types. Your opponent cannot target this card or monsters on the field with the same attribute as this card with card effects. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can declare one attribute. This card becomes the attribute until the end of this turn. So this card had the potential to be really good if Super Polymerization weren't banned. This was actually used in the OCG for a very brief moment of time where you could use Super Polymerization to fuse your opponent's monsters to make this thing, and it was cool because it was kind of a way to out particular boards. And you could theoretically still do that. Let's say your opponent makes an extra link board with Goki, you could fuse away a Trigate Wizard and a Nightmare Cerberus, because they're both Earth and they're both different types, to basically summon this thing. Now, the problem with that is if you're extra linked, you can't summon it, so that's kind of the big issue, but the bigger issue is that we don't have Super Polymerization. So the fact that we don't have Super Polymerization basically makes this card worthless. That was kind of like the only application that made this card really good. I guess you can summon this off of Instant Fusion, and basically if you're playing a mono attribute based deck, you could just declare that attribute, and now all of your cards have protection from targeting for the duration of the turn, and then once you're done doing your combos, you can just link off with it. So I guess it's kind of good in that respect. It might see some play because of that, but because Super Poly's still banned, I don't really have high hopes for this card, and because the only application really is in instances of extra linking, you can't summon this card anyway, so it kind of just completely defeats the purpose. So feels like a little too late on this card, but it's kind of cool. Maybe it'll see some play because of Instant Fusion. Then we have Arcana Extra Joker. It's a Link 3 Light Warrior effect, 2800 attack with arrows pointing up and bottom left, bottom right. Once per turn, when a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated that targets this face-up card or a monster this card points to, as a quick effect, discard the same type of card, negate that activation. Now, it doesn't destroy, which is kind of bad, so if your opponent does something that's like a monster effect, the monster's still going to be on the field, so you're not really gaining anything. You actually lost card advantage. When this Link Summon card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, which is very unlikely considering its 2800 attack, you can special summon one level 4 warrior normal monster from your deck, and if you do, add a level 4 warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So this is a really weird card. It needs 3 warrior monsters with different names. That's a pretty hefty requirement. The card design is cool, but it's just not good enough. I mean, you need a really strict summoning requirement to bring this card out. The arrows are good, the attack value is pretty good, but you lose card advantage because it doesn't destroy with the targeting protection. The targeting protection is nice, but realistically, it's not that good because it doesn't destroy, and it's never going to die by battle, so that second effect is never going to go off, and it also requires you to play normal warrior monsters for that to be the case. So unless you're playing like Noble Knights, which play the vanilla because of Rescue Rabbit or something, that's the only thing I can think of where that would ever come up. So I don't know, this card just seems like it's all right, but it doesn't really seem like anything too spectacular. Then we have Junk Collector. It's a level 5 light warrior effect monster, 1000 attack, 2200 defense. As a quick effect, you can banish this card on the field and one normal trap card in your graveyard. Apply that banished trap's effect. The trap activation requirements must still be correct, but costs are not paid. So, oh boy, Junk Collector basically enables a magical explosion FTK that basically you're just gonna like reasoning this guy out, and then you get magical explosion in your graveyard, summon him, banish magical explosion with a ton of spells in your grave, and you just burn your opponent to death. So I'm not too optimistic about this card. I mean, it does enable this FTK. Will it become a thing? I'm not too sure, but you know, it's one of those things that you might run into at a regional or something, and if you just get completely just destroyed by this, you know, it might happen. There's really no other use for this card other than facilitating that FTK, and, you know, it's just one of those things that we're gonna have to deal with. We have Stardust Assault Warrior, level 6 Wind Warrior Synchro effect, 2100 attack, 1200 defense. It requires a tuner and a non-tuner, one or more non-tuner, so it's generic. When this card is synchro summoned while you control no other monsters, you can target one junk monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only use this effect once per turn, and if it attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing. So it's not too bad. I mean, it's, you know, it gets you some advantage back when you make it. It's level 6, so in terms of like synchro mechanics and stuff, that's pretty good, since then you can go up to like 7, 8 and all that. Not too bad. Then we have Marshal Metal Marcher. It's a level 3 Wind Synchro Tuner effect. 500 attack, 2200 defense. It requires a tuner and one or more non-tuner, so again, it's generic. If it's synchro summoned, you can target one tuner in your graveyard, special summon it in defense position. So very similar to the Stardust Assault Warrior, except it's any tuner, so it's again, recurring some of the advantage you lost. You can just special summon the tuner that you used to make it, and that's pretty good. It gets its effects negated, but I mean, honestly, you're getting free advantage, so that's not too bad. You're probably just gonna synchro off with it anyway, so it's pretty irrelevant. You can only use that effect once per turn, and a synchro monster that used this card as material is treated as a tuner. So it's a pretty cool card. Again, I don't really see it being like too viable. I think like anyone playing like synchro decks would just love this card, but again, it's level 3, which is kind of restricting, but it's a pretty cool card nonetheless. And last but not least, we have Junk Connector. It's a Link 2 Dark Warrior Link effect monster with 1700 attack. Bottom left and bottom right arrows, probably the best arrows you can have in the game. It requires 2 effect monsters that have to be either warriors or machines, and one of them has to be a tuner, so that's pretty specific. Once per turn during the main or battle phase, you can, as a quick effect, immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon one synchro monster using only materials this card points to. If this link summon card is controlled, you control is destroyed by battle or opponent's card effect and sent to your graveyard, special summon one junk synchro monster from your extra deck. So that first synchro effect is very, very conditional because you have to synchro with the 2 cards that it's pointing to and nothing else. So if your alignment is off, then this effect is going to be absolutely worthless. If it had like 3 down pointing arrows, it wish you have like some more flexibility, but then it would be a Link 3. So I don't know, it's a little bit clunky. And then you also get the effect that you get to special summon a junk synchro monster from your extra deck, I think that's really good. It's weak enough that it can be killed in battle, and it's likely to be destroyed by your opponent's card effect. There are some ways to work around that, but at least you're getting to just special summon any junk synchro monster, and so it does replace itself, so I guess it's not too bad. I just think it's very specific in its requirements again, so again, we'll see. I mean, wrapping everything up though, it's one of those things that as I look at these cards and kind of go over them, does anyone else feel that these promos are really lackluster? I mean, these promos don't exactly get me excited. It feels like these promos are almost a few years too late. I mean, if you're someone who's excited about, you know, the Neos cards or the Neospatian cards or Synchrons and Junk cards and Synchro cards, then yeah, sure, okay, I could see why you might be excited, but I miss with last year's tins how we had promos that were really generic and pretty much every deck benefited from. Pot of Desires was an incredible example here because even though it might not be played too much in the current format, it's one of those cards that at any moment it's going to be relevant, and it was a card that was very expensive because it was only a secret rare and a lot of people wanted to get their hands on it, so they made it a promo, and now it's one of the cheapest staples in the game because of that. And I feel like these tins are missing something like that. Again, Proxy Dragon's another really good example. Proxy Dragon, while it may not be used right now, at the time, it was instrumental in the early embryonic stages of Link summoning because we didn't have a lot of Link monsters, and Proxy Dragon was a generic Link monster that really just helped facilitate a lot of the really good Link plays back in the day. And yeah, it's been power crept by now, but it was still really good and a lot of decks could take advantage of it. Most of these cards in these tins are very narrow in their application and belong to like one specific type of deck. It's either like a Synchro-based deck, a Neospatian-based deck, or you've got like a Fusion-based deck, and then you've got like a Magical Explosion FTK. Unless you're playing one of 4 of those strategies, then all the tin promos are useless. You know, Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, while we did just get it printed in Shadows in Valhalla, we didn't know that a couple months back, Ash Blossom would have made a really good candidate for the Mega Tins as a promo in a very similar way that Pot of Desires did, because it's a very, you know, in-demand card, it's generic, it can be played in every single deck, and it's a very strong card, so by printing it as a promo, you're basically making it accessible to anyone of any budget, and that's what I think a tin promo should be. We've had stuff like Ghost Ogre, we've had Max C, Pot of Desires, we've had good tin promos in the past, but I feel like these promos in particular are a bit lackluster. Maybe that's just my personal preference because I'm coming more from the competitive standpoint, but some of you guys might agree. If you do or if you don't, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by pledging any amount, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.